So we're going to go ahead and get started, and people keep coming in. I want to tell you we have a very exciting guest today, Attorney General for Colorado, Phil Weiser, is with us. Phil Weiser is Colorado's two-term Attorney General. He was the first major Democrat to declare his candidacy in the 2026 race to replace term-limited Governor Jared Polis. The Democratic primary is in June, and Phil Weiser will be the first candidate for governor listed on the ballot because of his resounding win of over 90% of the delegates at Assembly. Before entering politics, Weiser was dean of the University of Colorado School of Law. He served as Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Obama administration's Antitrust Division. He clerked for two Supreme Court Justices, Byron White and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. As Attorney General, he has filed more than 60 lawsuits against the Trump administration, almost one a week.
64 today. 64.
Oh my God, 64. His office has won or is winning in 29 of these cases, recovering millions in federal funding that the White House sought to block Coloradans. He brought in nearly $800 million for Colorado from an opioid settlement and led the antitrust challenge to the Kroger-Albertsons grocery merger. Phil Weiser is a first-generation American. His mother and grandmother were liberated from a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. He has talked publicly about how that family history shaped his commitment to the rule of law and public service. He lives in Denver with his wife and two children. Welcome, Phil Weiser.
And mostly well-behaved dog who's behind me.
So, Phil, I've known you for a long time, and you talk freely about your family history and your commitment to justice and how that has shaped your life. I imagine people watching this in Colorado especially, but even across the nation, have some version of this question. Is he going to fight for us?
That actually is the number one question I get. And I have many answers, including 64 and counting. That's how much I've sued this administration. I have got a philosophical answer. It's good starting here. If you're up against a bully, trying to make nice and accommodate is rarely a good strategy. Instead, you need to fight for what you believe in. And on matters of principle, I'm going to fight hard because in Colorado, we care about our immigrant communities, our LGBTQ community. We care about addressing climate issues. We care about protecting mail-in voting. We protect our criminal justice system, and we're not going to give into pressure to, let's say, let Tina Peters out of jail. This administration has continued to try to bully us, and my answer is I'm going to stand for what I believe in and fight for it. Now, I will say, in this Democratic primary, I'm running against Senator Michael Bennet. He's taken a different approach. He's voted for more of Trump's cabinet picks than almost any Democrat in the Senate. And when I've criticized some of these situations, like Brooke Rollins, who's the agriculture secretary, I had to sue her. I think that was lawsuit number 63 earlier this week, because she's trying to pressure us to give up information that we shouldn't be giving up at the risk of giving up food assistance for our high school or our K through 12 students. She's trying to take away SNAP benefits from 600,000 Coloradans and part of this bullying campaign. I don't believe when you're up against people trying to harm you that you support them. You need to be clear. You need to stand for what you believe in and fight for it.
Yeah, bravo. So you brought up a couple things I was going to ask you about. Tina Peters will have a new sentencing hearing after the Colorado Court of Appeals found that she was improperly sentenced in 2024. Will you tell our guests here today how this lands with you and your commitment to uphold the rule of law?
This was breaking news from this week. Let me lead with the key points. Tina Peters' conviction is valid. She broke the law. She engaged in deceptive, wrongful criminal conduct. She should be held to account. Number two, the president cannot pardon her for crimes that are Colorado crimes. We have our sovereign authority. The president's pardon of power has no sway here. Number three, to your point, the judge in the sentencing did refer to her conspiracy theories and her work to undermine elections. And that work is, as a from the Court of Appeal standpoint, protected First Amendment activity. The lower court judge should not have referred to that, should not have considered it in any way. So it has to go back and be resentenced. I want to be clear. Her crimes are really serious crimes. She's going to have a significant and serious sentence. The fact the judge mentioned that was a concern the Court of Appeals noted, but it shouldn't take away from the fact it's a valid conviction. It's a serious crime. There will be accountability and a very significant sentence.
Yeah, I mean, they've upheld her conviction. So I really think while we're on the rule of law, though, there's a couple of things that I want to ask you about. You filed more lawsuits against this administration than almost any attorney general in the country. But if you're governor, you lose the ability to file lawsuits. So what tools will you have as governor to protect Coloradans from federal overreach?
This is an important point, and I get different versions of it. First, for those who are not aware, I can no longer stay as Attorney General. We have term limits in Colorado. I will serve my 8 years. I'm then limited. For me, it's either serve as governor or not stay in elected public service. I choose to stay in elected public service. I'm running to be our next governor. The governor sets the tone for the state. I mentioned a number of Colorado principles and values. How do we treat our immigrant community? How do we treat the LGBTQ community? How do we think about diversity and inclusion? How do we think about our voting systems and more? The governor needs to speak clearly, set principle, and then be a partner with the attorney general, making sure that we defend our principles. I am committed to that partnership. I'm committed to that moral clarity. And I'm committed to the principle I mentioned that I'm not going to try to accommodate or appease this administration. You've seen governors like J.B. Pritzker. You've seen governors like in Minnesota confronting this administration and their bullying tactics. It is crucial we have a governor who is firm, who represents our values, and brings people together, letting Colorado lead with the values we believed in and not be pressured. We've seen too many organizations bend the knee to this administration, not here in Colorado, not under my watch.
Well, I want to thank Thor for putting the Blue Sky handle for Indivisible in the chat, and also for putting Phil's campaign page in the chat. Our ODC team will enter actions in the chat that people can take with respect to the issues we'll be talking about. I have one more question on the rule of law, but I want to say that the number one thing that everyone must do is register to vote and participate in the primary. This really matters. So, Phil, what if ICE comes to Denver en masse? Is that breaking Colorado law, given that we're a sanctuary state?
We had a lot going on this week. I mentioned already the Tina Peters ruling. Let me get to another ruling. This administration has sued me one time. I've sued them 64 times. They sued me. What they said is, because Colorado has a policy that law enforcement does law enforcement does not do immigration enforcement, we are somehow violating the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution. That argument was wrong. It is offensive to me because it does not respect our sovereign authority and the 10th Amendment. So we pushed back, asked the judge to dismiss the case. He did. He threw this case out, saying that in Colorado, we get to manage our law enforcement appropriately, and they can't force us to do what is their job. Now, you raise a different question. What if they send their ICE officials to Colorado en masse, like we saw in Minnesota? And what I've said about this is the fact that Minnesota responded with such moral clarity, with such strong, peaceful protests, with such community solidarity, I think makes it a lot less likely there will be another Minnesota. But if there is one in Colorado, we'll be ready. And we'll respond the same way Minnesota did, bringing people together, supporting the fair, sensible, and lawful treatment of immigrants. The deprivation of due process rights, to me, is so wrong. I am a first-generation American. My mom, as you noted, and my grandparents came here as refugees. This issue is personal to me. So yes, I am committed to protecting Colorado from any of their shenanigans or unlawful tactics. That could be violations of constitutional rights. That could be harming people like we saw with Renee Good and Alex Preddy, or a case in Durango involving an alleged assault. That's why I set up a complaint system. If people do know of ICE activity that's concerning, they can let me know about it and we'll do something about it.
Yeah, and Larity has put in the chat there the complaint system, mentioned that right there at the AG's office, and the link. So guys, if you are interested in being like Minnesota, if needed, if standing proud, please give us a heart in the chat. Put a comment in the chat, letting us know that you will stand strong. So I have another one. This was
Please.
a headline in the news, and it's a really important issue, and somebody's already asked about it in the chat. The Trump administration plans to move the U.S. Forest Service to Utah and shutter all the research sites, including those focused on preventing wildfires. The intent, I think, is to do to the Forest Service what they're doing to the Department of Education, give the management of public resources to corporations. Colorado has 11 national forests within its boundaries. What will you do as governor to ensure they're protected?
Well, we have to use every tool we can, and obviously litigation has been one of the most effective tools we have. I've had to sue the agriculture sector. I have already mentioned that. Her attack on SNAP benefits, her firing Forest Service firefighters, and now, as you're noting, this actions with the Forest Service. We'll be looking closely at them, asking how do we protect Colorado. Her administration of that agency, the Agriculture Department, is, to me, so problematic. I do not know how Michael Bennet says he continues to stand by his vote for her and support her. She's a real problem, and this is a challenge of this administration. When you're dealing with people who do not operate in good faith, who do not follow the law, it's not like you can reason with them. You've got to be committed to the law as a tool for accountability. You've got to find pressure points. And one of the opportunities in this election is keep Michael Bennet in the Senate. He can be chair of the Agriculture Committee if the Democrats can take the Senate, and that'll give us some real valuable leverage. We need to make sure we protect their forests, as you said, and the Forest Service needs to be an effective partner. I continue to be shocked by how this administration is failing to basically execute the laws as proper, and instead is looking to engage in these types of retribution campaigns or just dismantle key institutions of governance.
You know, Rainer, I'm about to get to your question, and Ellen, I'm going to get to yours after that. The Colorado River is in crisis. Lake Powell could lose hydropower generation by later this year. The interstate agreements that govern drought response just expired. What does a Colorado governor even have the power to do here? In your answer, can you touch on the multi-year drought and this season's low snowpack? Trump vetoed the Arkansas Valley Conduit, and you fought the San Luis Valley Water Export Scheme. All of those are part of this water drought Colorado River crisis.
Sandy, we could have done the whole chat on water. There's so much to be said, and you teed up a lot of great issues. Let me start with one important principle. We need to make sure our next governor is a leader on water. It is so critical to our future. That leadership has to include understanding what our legal rights are, understanding the right way to manage water. And I forgot, it was Thor was doing a good job putting stuff in the chat. I do have a plan on water as part of our Colorado Blueprint. Thor gave you the whole one in the chat, but you can look up the special water plan and we can share it with people. The point I want to make is there's a right way and a wrong way to manage water, and you also teed this up in one of your questions. Moving water from the San Luis Valley, destroying that community's lifeblood, that community's agriculture economy, it's wrong. It's not how we manage water in Colorado. Now, we're going to have to make a lot of changes, all of us making changes, including things like how do we conserve water, think about xeriscaping lawns, think about how do we maybe use some different crops, how do we make sure that we're not letting water evaporate. There's a lot of work to do. I will lead with a future-oriented, innovation-minded, and collaborative mindset so that we manage our water thoughtfully. You mentioned the Arkansas Valley Conduit. That's about making sure that drinkable water gets to southeast Colorado. That was pushed by Lauren Boebert. The only question about Trump's veto of it, was it vindictive as part of his anti-Colorado campaign related to Tina Peters and our mail-in voting, or did he not like that Lauren Boebert was pushing the disclosure of the Epstein files? In any event, that was a wrongful veto, and it was a sorry situation that the Congress could not override that veto, even though there was overwhelming support initially for pushing through that project that is so needed for our southeast Colorado neighbors. With respect to the other states that were situated near in the Colorado River, you made this very important point. The snowpack is the lowest it's been in a long time. We're facing a very challenging hydrology, and we don't have an agreement anymore because the agreement we had starting 2007 is about to expire, and there's no consensus on what can come next. This leads to a very difficult situation. We're likely to have litigation, and that's because lower basin states, think Arizona here, they want to keep using more water than they're entitled to. They're growing alfalfa in Arizona, shipping it to Saudi Arabia with Colorado River water. That's insane. I think we're going to get to an agreement at some point. We're going to figure out a forward-looking, innovative plan. But like dealing with the Trump administration, this case is dealing with Arizona or California, I'm not going to give up our rights and be a chump because I just want to have peace. If you're essentially giving up what is yours, that's not peace, that's extortion, or that's compromising on your values. We need to have a deal based on what is fair. And ultimately, I believe we're going to get there, but it's going to be tough. And we have a lot of work to do in how we manage water in the years ahead. It's an area I'm passionate about. There's obviously a lot more that can be said, but I'll leave it there.
I am hearing the passion in your voice. And every time I'm around you, I ask you about this. I do it in public on purpose because I want to keep it in the front of mind of people who are leading in this state. We need leaders who are strong on this issue. People are asking about agriculture. People are asking about livestock. We need to look at the existing water rights and whether people are just taking water out because they have the right to and not because they use it. It's a pretty complex issue, but I hear that you're really committed to form consensus and collaborate with other governors in the 7 states that the Colorado River serves. So I'm excited to see what'll develop there. So we've had this question in the chat. It's also dear to my heart. As governor, will you strengthen and support the wolf reintroduction project that a majority of Colorado voters said they wanted through voting on a ballot measure?
This is another difference between Senator Bennett and myself. He has called for the suspension of this program. And that is a revealing statement because there is no such provision in Colorado law. This is, as you said it well, the will of the voters. This is an obligation. And so it is incumbent on our leadership to follow the law. I don't quite understand why Senator Bennett says he wants to break the law and have a suspension of this program. That is concerning, to say the least. With respect to how you do it, this is where, and you used the word earlier, collaboration is an important value, that we make sure we're bringing people together, understanding what people's concerns are. And I have shown in my leadership as AG that I know how to do that. I put together a response to the opioid crisis with 19 regions, all working together, supporting one another, learning from one another. We've got work to do. You can see behind me, by the way, one of the books is called Possible by William Ury. Great book on conflict management. And I've been doing this work. I'm prepared to do it, whether it's water, whether it's wolves, or what other issues may arise. We need a leader who cares about and works with all of our state effectively.
So I have to ask this because my fellow leaders in ICANN are all interested in the answer to this subject. How can Colorado hold Suncor accountable for their ongoing EPA violations?
This is one of the unfortunate situations that I'm going to need to fix. Our current Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment right now does not have enforcement capacity. What happens is that people can bring information to CDPHE, and then CDPHE can then investigate and act on it. But CDPHE doesn't have the capacity to oversee Suncor in the first instance. That's really a problem that we need to fix. We need our Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, or CDPHE, to have monitoring and have the tools for effective enforcement. That's something I'm going to prioritize when I'm governor. I understand what effective enforcement looks like. I don't have, as AG, authority to oversee Suncor or oil and gas operations. I will as governor. But where I do have authority in consumer protection, you can see about my enforcement record going after Google, Meta, the Kroger-Albertsons merger. I'm not afraid to go after big companies when they break the law and harm people. I'm going to be able to do that as governor.
You know, I have seen you build coalitions too in your office now, and I think that's a big thing is we have to get people together. We can't go on divided. There's got to be some consensus among like-minded folks that we're going to do things together. We're going to do something about them. And for that reason, I think you'll be a good governor because you're very good at that. Now let's move on to another subject. We wanted to talk about building a better future for Coloradans, and especially, I have a lot of young interns on my team, on my production team. They can't find jobs.
Yeah.
They are skilled, they're talented, they're coming out of their master's degrees with a lot of student loans. The cost of living here is escalating. I mean, housing is off the charts. So let's talk about the high cost of living in Colorado. A February survey this year found 51% of Gen Z respondents said they had to move because where they had living had become too expensive. So you've set a goal to build 40,000 new homes.
Yeah.
Your opponent says you need to build 80,000. The federal government is putting tariffs on the materials you'd need to build them. How does any of this get done?
Well, you mentioned what Michael Bennett said. Michael Bennett has said he wants to get this housing done, I guess, with a magic wand, because he hasn't explained what he's going to do.
Right.
And this is important. I've said we need 80,000 new of these starter homes. I want to cut that in half. Yes, I'd love to do it all, but I thought that's not realistic. And so when I say here's something I plan to do, it's because I believe we can do it. It is an ambitious goal. The trend lines have been in the wrong direction. We've kept having more and more of a gulf, more and more of a deficit. I want to now start cutting that. And this is important because if people are looking at the possibility of home ownership at some point, or even renting, and there's not enough available, they're going to leave Colorado. And we're going to lose young people. And we're already losing young people. The population growth right now is the lowest it's been since 1990. So let me try to go through your question, because when I think about our future, it's exactly the way you talked about it, which is, can you afford to live here? And you're going to have opportunities to live here and to take on good jobs. And if the answer is no and no, that is tragic for our future.
Yeah, I lose most of my team if we don't do something to help them, answer the cost of living here, the cost of housing, the scarcity of housing. And they're skilled, they're talented, and they need to and want to find jobs here. They want to work, and they're just the right people for Colorado. So I don't want to lose them. I have my own vested interest in seeing you solve this problem.
Well, we're going to solve it. And one thing I want people to know is, if you're looking for a proven creative problem solver, look at my record taking on challenges. Like, for example, the opioid crisis. I mentioned this before. We got the $900 million from suing Big Pharma. We set up a program to put that money to work. It's been praised from Johns Hopkins School of Public Health to John Oliver. The last 2 years, we've cut opioid overdose deaths in Colorado by 21%. So how do I get to work on housing? We're going to have a leadership team, starting with a chief housing officer, bring all the state's housing efforts under one person. Right now, they're fragmented. We're going to make sure that we start incentivizing the types of homes we need. Currently, we charge the same permitting fees, same permitting time if you're building the starter homes we need, duplexes, triplexes, as if you're building a mansion. We need to start incentivizing what we need with very low permitting fees, with quick pre-approval times if possible, and leaning into modular construction, which can be 20% cheaper, 30% quicker. We also need to make sure we've got, and someone mentions in the chat, I think, homeowners assistance available for teachers, nurses, law enforcement, first responders. We have currently too many people who are these essential workers can't afford to live in the communities where they're working. The state itself, our programs, some mentions in the chat, perhaps is 1, 2, 3. We got to get effective at getting money and programs out there and leveraging them quickly because it's been taking too long. This is indeed my number one priority. How do we get this done? I'll add childcare and healthcare are also real concerns about affordability. And your other point is important too, Sandy, which is I want people to know, young people, there are going to be opportunities for them. I'm going to be committed to working on our workforce development and skills development. So we're building a much better pipeline for young people to be able to have opportunities. One area that I'm passionate about is something called Colorado Core, telling young people after high school, community college, or college, we want you in paid public service roles, teaching, nursing, firefighting, law enforcement, counseling, all across Colorado. A call to service, giving young people access not just to build skills, but to make a difference and feel a sense of belonging. Sandy, we've got real challenges on our hands. You put this really well. Playing defense against this federal government, but then leading Colorado and building a great future. I'm set up to do both things. I'm a proven fighter. I will fight for Coloradans, whether it's against the Trump administration or predatory companies I've taken on, and I will help build more housing, childcare, better healthcare, and opportunities for our kids. We need both of those things.
I want to remind everyone there's just been great questions in the chat. So many of them, we can't get to them all, but we see you, we hear you, and I know Phil is reading them too. I want you to know that in the show notes, this will be made into a video. Substack will distribute it, and we'll put in the show notes all these resources we're seeing in the chats, the things you can do, the research we've done on A.G. Weiser's career, so you can look at all of his accomplishments. Also, I have a really important announcement. My next guest on April 17th is Colorado State Senator running for the U.S. Senate to take John Hickenlooper's seat, Julie Gonzalez. So come back in 2 weeks at the same time, same place. Let's talk about jobs that pay a living wage for Coloradans. The AFL-CIO is asking people to reach out to you about protecting workers' rights. What do you have to say about that?
I'm all in. We need to make sure that we protect workers, that we protect the right to organize, and that we change this antiquated law called the Labor Peace Act. I'm going to make sure that we do all those things. If you look at my record as AG, I've protected workers, taking on the Kroger-Albertsons merger that was going to cost jobs. I've taken on companies like HCA that put workers in these training repayment agreement provisions, locking them nurses into jobs. We need to make sure that workers are treated fairly. I'm committed to doing that and finding the right solutions. I do want to mention this because 2 points came up in the chat. I didn't get to mention them. I am the candidate of Colorado Indivisible. We had a wonderful forum hosted by Colorado Indivisible, and it is very important to make sure that we are working together. I love the spirit of Colorado Indivisible. I'm honored to have their support. Also, it was a nice thing that was put in the chat about someone said they contributed twice by accident, and I keep time. I'm not sure who that was. It's passed by a little bit, but it's very, very kind. If you want to contribute, philforcolorado.com. You can also buy merch at our merch store, philforcolorado.com/store. We have a dog bandana. I think we even have a T-shirt with a picture of my dog wearing the dog bandana.
Yeah, Dog Dad, Phil Weiser. So let's talk about something else. We have not really touched on youth mental health. One of the underlying stresses for young people is economic, but also, we can tie this to your fight against the opioid vendors, the bringing down the opioid crisis. We can also tie this to the administration's cutting back funding on programs that help young people with mental health issues. How, as governor, can you lead this state to better mental health opportunities and support for young people?
I'm so glad you mentioned this because when you talk about it from the economic lens, you're missing the spiritual or emotional lens. And young people, yes, they're concerned, am I going to get a job? What's AI doing to the workforce? Am I getting trained in the right skills? Those are real important concerns. But here's another set of concerns. Am I lonely, isolated, disconnected? Do I have mentors? Do I have behavioral health support? Or am I spending hours and hours and hours online, often on these social media platforms, dragging you down dark holes? There's a lot of work on this front. Me share a little bit about some of the stuff I've done, I'm doing, and what I'm going to do as governor. I'm taking on Meta right now. We got a trial set for this summer to change how they operate as a company. I pushed legislation as Attorney General that the governor vetoed, Governor Polis, that is, relating to obligations on social media platforms that would remove people who are pushing fentanyl or guns to young people, require them to cooperate with law enforcement more. I took on Jewel, who pushed vaping in the schools, and I got that money, and we started a support program for youth mental health, building some best practices that I want to scale up when I'm governor. Young people are hurting. You can see some of my plans in the Colorado Blueprint on this. It's really critical. I mean, Sandy, I said housing, top priorities we need to address. This one's right up there for me. It's really important.
You know, what I think is that young people have been handed a kind of a horrible deal. We set up everything in this country thinking that there was equality, that there was justice, and that there were opportunities for all. And young people in particular are suffering right now because they don't see the future looking so sunny and so bright. What kind of coalitions can we build in Colorado to support them, to give them the opportunity to have the kind of lives that some of us older people have had?
I'm going to mention 3 areas, each of which are ones I have made reference to before, but there's a lot more there. For every student, I want them to have multiple mentors. 40% of Colorado students say they've got no mentors in their life. Mentors are a source of hope, of coaching, of opportunity that if you can find a bright future, it fills you with a sense of purpose, a sense of, I can do this. Where if you are hopeless and you don't have a mentor, you're like, I don't know if I can do this. So that's number 1. Number 2, we need a robust commitment to what you might call personalized learning or competency-based learning, where every single person is given the chance to understand, here are some skills that are available for you to develop that you may have some propensity or aptitude for, and here are some jobs and opportunities that we can help prepare you for. We got to scale up career and technical education because we have defunded it, and that is hurting young people right now. Also, I mentioned this idea of Colorado Core. I want to talk a little more about it. What you're saying to every young person is, we need you serving Colorado in these public service roles. These are jobs that won't be replaced by AI,
Yeah.
desperately needed. Teachers, counselors, nurses, law enforcement, and firefighters. So we tell young people, we need you in these public service roles. Do this, and then we'll help either relieve some of your debts that you may have, or we'll help pay for more education, giving young people a sense of belonging about their future, giving them a sense of self-efficacy. And I know how powerful these service programs are because one of my 64 lawsuits was to save AmeriCorps. And I've heard from AmeriCorps volunteers about what an incredible impact that program has had on their sense of self, on their feeling a sense of belonging and purpose. So you're totally right, Sandy. There's a lot of work to do here. I'm excited to get to work.
This is so exciting, Phil. I really love hearing you talk about this, and I can hear the passion in your voice. And I just want to say that our production team, our Democracy Collective, we're on YouTube, we're on Substack, we're everywhere. We mentor 11 interns, young people with skills and talents in writing, script writing, graphic design, media messaging, and video editing that are really looking to build their portfolio so they can find jobs. They want to live in places like Colorado. They want to live in a state where there are 11 national forests. They want to ski. They want answers to climate change so that we can ski. They want safe drinking water, and they want good jobs, and they're willing to work for them. So we need a leader who can bring all that to young people. Are you that guy?
100%. Like I said, I want everyone here to dive deeper. The more people learn about what my leadership will provide, what my track record demonstrates, the stronger we're going to do in this campaign. So if everyone who's watching this can share this with 5 or 10 people they know, can go to philforcolorado.com, whether you make a donation, buy merch, or just get and share information, it's valuable. And we're on all the social media platforms out there, Phil for Colorado. Please learn more, get engaged. I am that leader, and we're going to get there with your help.
I have one more question for you, but before we go, I want to remind everyone this will become a video. So Substack does that automatically, and they distribute it across the Substack platform. So you can share it with friends. I'll also send it to my subscribers. I hope Phil will too. So we can get people there who couldn't come today because they were at work or with family or whatever. And we'll have all the show notes, the resources, the links to Phil's campaign page, and articles about him in the press. We'll have all those included when the video goes out. So I have this last question for you, and I hate to let you go, but your campaign manager told me you only could spare 45 minutes today. And I believe that's true because you're on the phone, and that's why we started late. What is your vision for the future for Colorado? Just tell us. What do you see in your heart of hearts?
This is a good place to end. My vision is that Coloradans come together with a spirit of all of us need all of us, and that we're looking our future just the way you framed it, which is how do we make sure kids growing up here want to stay and can stay, which means we have to make Colorado affordable for them. We have to create opportunities for them, and we have to make sure they feel a sense of belonging. The different pieces of my platform fit into a coherent whole. And we talked about all of them. How do we manage water effectively in Colorado? How do we improve and invest in education, youth mental health, and workforce development, including things like the mentoring initiative I talked about, including things like Colorado Core? How do we make sure we're building a lot more housing so people know they can afford to buy a home, and they can afford childcare so they can have kids, and afford healthcare so they can live here? We can do this together in Colorado. Yes, right now is a challenging moment. We're growing by the lowest we've grown since 1990, but we came out of that challenging moment together with the right leadership like Governor Roy Romer and Federico Pena, both of whom endorsed me to be Cosnick's governor. I'm ready to lead. I've shown what that leadership can look like, working on the opioid crisis, working on public safety and water. I know our state inside and out. We cannot afford a governor who doesn't know this state, who doesn't know the role from day one. There's too much to do. Let's get to work.
Ah, Phil, what a perfect closer. So everyone remember, in 2 weeks at 2 p.m., we're going to have Senator Julie Gonzalez on. She's running to take John Hickenlooper's seat, and you can hear from her too. She's a rock star and a powerhouse. But in the meantime, look at Phil's campaign website. See what you can do. Join in some of the public events. Come to them, talk to him, get to know him, and tell him what you're thinking about too. Phil, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And Tracy's made this point in the chat, so let me make it for everybody.
Yeah,
our campaign's a people power campaign. We really need you. I don't have out-of-state billionaires and a big PAC with different corporate and other interests. I've got the people of Colorado, Colorado indivisible. 90% of all the delegates at the Democratic Party State Assembly. I'm doing the circuit next week. I'll be getting out, talking to voters all across Colorado. I'm running this campaign the right way. We need you as part of it.
Thanks so much, Phil. It was great to see you. I loved talking to you today. Let's do more of this.
You got it.
And thanks everyone that came in the chat and the audience. Remember, there'll be a video, share it with your friends, and look for Our Democracy Collective on Substack and on YouTube. And we'll see you all at the next one. Bye.
Thanks.